World's End Highway to Uganda to see where this car sat for so many years. Well, here's the thing, I discovered that it hasn't actually sat there for 30 years. You see, I was talking to some of the locals, you know, when I got to Uganda, I coincidentally walked into the auction of the very house that I was going to look at that day. In fact, the auction started in about half an hour when I arrived. So I stuck around and I watched the auction, and the place was like a mansion. I could actually walk through because all these real estate agents were there. And I got to walk through the house, and you know, the floors were dilapidated. From the stories I heard from the locals, it was completely filled up. It was a real hoarder's house. The floors were soft, the walls were salt damped, there was a massive hill on the back of the property, and when I stuck around for the auction, the opening price was $290,000. It got passed in for that. I believe the vendor bid was about $310,000 with no bids. I don't think anyone negotiated on that price as well. It would have made a great hotel or hostel or something out there, you know, because there's a lot of migrant farmers out in that area. But I walked around town for a little bit longer, and I talked to about 3 people. I talked to Greg, Elizabeth, and I didn't catch the last guy's name. However, he was at the auction, and I talked to him, and 2 of them recognized the car. They looked at it and they gone, "Oh, is that the same one? Oh, well done." That was it. But they do remember the car sitting around, and they talked to the guy. Well, let's be blunt, he only owned the car for about 10 or 15 years. He didn't own it for 30 years. He bought it at an auction himself and just let it sit. He didn't actually own it since 1996. It hadn't sat there since 1996. It wasn't a Uganda local car since 1996. It just so happened he bought it around 2010, parked it, and then died, and then I got it. Old Phil, everyone called him. And people remember him saying that he wants 30 grand for the car in as-is condition. Like, that was before I got it, and it was in trashed condition. Like the front and rear suspension were totaled, the engine was totaled, interior was totaled, the body was totaled, and he was asking like 30 grand for it back then, and told one guy, I believe Greg, that the engine alone was worth 15k. He was that sort of guy. And hey, power to him, I guess, but yeah, that's how people remembered him, unfortunately. Apparently he had a Rolls Royce as well. No one knew what the model was. They just knew it was a late 60s Rolls Royce, so probably a Silver Shadow. Usually are. Those are the more common Rolls Royces. And that one, he was asking a fair dinkum 50 grand for back in 2010. And it was in as good condition as this one was when we first started with it. So you can be guaranteed not in great condition. And you know what? The car drove great. I wanted to shoot like a review of me driving it and things like that, but I think the visuals speak louder than what I can say about it. You know, like, I'm not a car reviewer. I can't tell you why I like this car. It's got the smoothest torque. It's got low horsepower. Like, the horsepower is good, but it's a 2-ton car, so it just doesn't launch it as hard as you'd think on paper that it would. But the torque is effortless. It's just fantastic. It just climbs to 100 and it'll keep going, but not as fast as you probably expect. It's like the best way I can describe it is it's like driving a cannonball, or it's like a lead magic carpet. It's a magic carpet made out of lead. It's like, and it just, it's fantastic how this goes. It's stylish. It looks great. It's not as big as people might attribute it as. It's long, but it's not wide. These things are fantastic cars. You know, when people say like these are oversized, they really aren't. Like, honestly, I could park this next to a modern car, and the modern car would dwarf this. A BA Falcon from like 2004, 2005 is bigger than this. It's certainly wider and taller. So these aren't big cars. Like, people would keep telling, they'll bang on about how big these cars are. It's not big. the 13:1 steering ratio steering box, or amazing. Like the steering is so quick on this car. It really does feel like a bit of a sports car. And you know, the ergonomics is great on this car too. You know, you can reach the dashboard no problem. Some of the gauges are hard to read. Namely, keeping an eye on the fuel gauge it's a bit difficult based on the angle. Another complaint is that the toggle switches are hard to identify. Like they're not unique. Like you got 8 toggle switches which look gorgeous on the dashboard, and the dashboard is genuinely what I think is one of the most pretty dashboards I've ever had, and they're very handsome. And but the problem is you can't just while it looks good, you can't just nonchalantly turn on things or put the wipers on, for example, because it's not a distinct feeling compared to other switches. Like, you can't blindly reach for a switch, you got to look at the switch because they all feel the same. So ergonomically, it's fine. It definitely could be worse.
The old Kapunda Miner. And look at that. They fucked up a swastika on him. No, you dumbasses.
This car's been reliable. It's started every single time I've wanted to, and for the past month it's been absolutely great to drive. I bloody love driving this thing. The fuel economy sucks. It's about 16 litres per 100 kilometres, but it makes it up for just the comfort, the ride, the handling, which I think is a lot better than period cars with their leaf springs and more rigid front ends. Like, I don't know, this one just feels a lot better set up. After the Dundee trip, it stopped shifting into 3rd gear. It would shift into 3rd gear coming back from Uganda, which was nice.
The transmission blowing up on me with the Jag sort of reminds me of you know, not to invest your happiness so much into cars, because they break. You know, these old cars, they do break. That's why I'm into fixing them rather than necessarily driving them or talking about them all the time. In my other car, Dodge Phoenix 1970, I bring it up all the time. I repaired the back window onto it, and I never drive it. And I always think, like, is this car really making me happy? It just sitting there? It doesn't. It's just there, you know. And but I bring it up because on the rear window, I wrote down my favorite quote by Yoko Ono, and she has a great quote. If I can read it out. Let people copy or photograph your paintings, destroy the original. And what she meant, I think, by that is, you know, take a picture, it lasts longer. But it's just that, you know, it's the whole, it always exists sort of in media, but it doesn't really exist at all in person. And if it does get destroyed, who cares, you know? I mean, people enjoyed it while it was, and I enjoyed it while it was still driving. And you only ever see that quote once the car's rusted out, and that's my intention with that quote, is the fact that I wrote it in a position underneath the window that you will never see. You can't even see it if you climb into the boot. You'll never see unless that rear window rusts out. And I think the same way with the Jaguar.
And reverse is gone. So the transmission is properly cooked. I'm not sure why. It only sat for 30 years. So yeah, I wonder why. To be honest, I sort of expected that the transmission was going to be the weakest link in this car. The Model 8 Borg-Warner transmission is a fantastic transmission, but this one's been sitting neglected for 30 years, and that doesn't bode well for reliability.
And I know it's probably not what you guys want to hear, but I have been neglecting the Leyland P76 project because I'm poor, and that transmission just blew up. Instead, I'm working on a XY Falcon over here. It's a Fairmont Wagon. I'm doing rust repairs onto it, and I'm also swapping the engines onto it. It's not my car. I'm just doing it because it needs to be done. I'll replace the seals on the other side. I'll take you around the rust repairs on this. It's a car blog. I'm going to work on what I feel like. I apologize
this has got priority at the moment. I am working on cars. It's just, I always like the saying, life is what happens when you make plans. You know, like, I had plans to work on the P76, and yeah, like, I do want to work on it. It's just, this came up, and again, it's not my car. I'm just working on it. And it's like, I've sort of got to do it. So, doing some, like, rust repairs. Yeah, I'll show you around it.
So, sorry Jaguar, I can't work on you now. Again, life happens. Because I've got 3 transmissions here. A manual, 2 automatics. I've got a 250 engine here that I'm robbing parts off of and putting onto this 221 engine. I found out that this flex plate doesn't fit onto this because this bolt pattern is smaller than the 250 that replaced it. So whoopsie doodles, I'm gonna have to drill out the flex plate to make it fit. I'm not sure if I have much footage of this, but I replaced this whole section here to match the other side. I think it's like the bumper bar support, or it's like the plenum support. I patched up the chassis here and here. I made this front section, the bottom section, and I'll take you around. I've also done the rear of this panel. I didn't make this panel. This was like a reproduction part that was bought off of eBay, and it fills in this gap here, which was needed. I just zipped out the spot welds across here. I've gone ahead and replaced the sill panel underneath here. I've got to do it on the other side as well. This took me all day yesterday to weld in. I had to drill out all the holes at the bottom here. I'll throw up a picture. I had to drill out all the holes at the bottom here, fill them up with plug welds. Cut the sill there to weld it up there, and then all across here I had to do some welding to weld that all in. So the sills are fully repaired on this side, and I've done some rust repairs on this hood. This corner here was all blown out, about this much of it. Shaped the new corner of this hood so it becomes usable again. This isn't my best work here, but I mean, it's close enough, isn't it? Also rust repaired this section here. Again, it's not my best work, but skim coated bog forgives all sins. I'll get the transmission rebuilt as soon as I'm able, but for now I have obligations to work on a different car at the moment. I can't continue working on this at this stage. I do want to get back to this. I really do. This is honestly it probably really is the greatest car I've ever had. This car's fucking awesome. So, hey, look, thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next episode, whatever that may be. So, yes, do stick around.